Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. It's Wednesday. How are you guys doing today? I hope everybody is doing well. I have a really interesting guest today. He is a midlife, that's us, right? We're at midlife, dating coach and the author, Jonathon Aslay, and he's going to talk to me today about self-love. So the title of his book is What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? And I'm glad that we're going to be talking about this because I don't think people really understand the whole self-love thing. Like a lot of us are like, oh, you're all into yourself, or you feel like it's a narcissistic quality, but it's really not, because true self-love is when we love ourselves, then we expect the best for ourselves. But that also means that we're present enough to give the best of ourselves to somebody else. So that's what we're going to talk about today. To my regulars, thank you so much for being here with me. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome. I am a photographer, an author, and I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe, Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And I talk all about manifesting in my book, and I have people create manifesting postcards. And if you want to know what that is, go to my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com, and you will see how to create a manifesting postcard. I tell you how to set the space and where to send it. And I photograph your postcard. And when your manifestation shows up in your reality, we could share your story. And in my book, there are 30 of those stories. And one of the sections of my book is about relationships, and that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today, about romantic relationships and getting into dating again, especially in midlife. So let me share with you, quickly before I forget, you can listen to any of my shows on any of the podcasting platforms. There will always be a description in the show notes about what the show is about. You can listen to it at Om Times in the archives, on Postcards to the Universe under podcast, or on Apple iTunes, whatever you're on, wherever you prefer, you'll find all my shows. And if there's guests that you're interested in listening to, please do. And let me know what you think. All right, so let's get into my guest today, Jonathon Aslay. So he's the focus of one of America's leading midlife dating coaches with over 200,000 YouTube subscribers, and has expanded into a deeper essential philosophy on what it truly means to love. After losing his 19-year-old son in 2018, Jonathon's grief led him on a soul-searching inner journey where he became aware of an often overlooked dimension of the dating conversation. He realized that the dating process reveals the most common emotional health issues faced with many singles seeking a partner: a distressing lack of self-worth, self-regard, and self-love. Today, he is on a mission to encourage both men and women to fully love themselves with his book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? Packed with fun, engaging, spiritual, and personal growth practices. And if you want to find out more about him, and you could link to his YouTube channel, go to jonathonaslay.com. I'm going to spell it for you, JONATHONASLAY.com. Welcome, Jonathon. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Oh my God. I could tell you're like, oh, I'm so honored. I'm like, woo.
Can I tell you a quick story? Can I tell you a quick story?
Because absolutely. Please share.
When I think of postcards to the universe, I want to share something I did. It was probably, I want to say 10, 15 years ago. Now my memory is a little bit off. But I once wrote down all of the qualities I was looking for in a relationship, and I put it in an envelope, and I just addressed it to the universe. And I
Love
put a
that.
stamp on it, had my name, or I didn't put my name and address. I just put down my first name, and I dropped it in the mailbox. And I've always often wondered if anyone ever found it and read it, kind of thing.
Oh, wait, so you didn't mail it back to yourself. You just put your name on it and just threw it in the mail and just let it go to wherever it needed to go.
Well,
That's really kind of interesting. I
well,
love
it was
that.
addressed to the universe. Like the front said
Yeah.
the universe. And the idea was, I was always kind of like, where would this end up? I didn't think to put my actual name and address in the envelope in the letter, but it was but the idea was kind of like a message in the bottle.
Mhm.
Just put it out there and see what happens, kind of thing.
Oh my God, I love that. It probably went to that department. What is it? The dead letter mail department. And then maybe they're searching for you. Who is this person you're trying to solve the story? No, I love that. So, how did you get into being a coach for people to date? Like, how did that? Were you always in coaching and you specialized in romantic dating and relationships, or is this something you stumbled into? How'd that
Yep.
happen for you?
It was the latter. I stumbled into it. I don't think anyone goes to school and says, I'm going to become a dating or relationship coach. I fell into it after turning 40, going through a divorce some years back. I found myself in the dating marketplace, and there was this thing called online dating, which was
Yes.
relatively new 15 plus years ago. And I thought
Right.
you could just, punch in exactly what you want and someone would magically appear. And I'll never forget, I went on a great first date, really nice person, but something wasn't right. And then, a couple days later, another date with a nice person, something wasn't right. And then another and another one. And in a year, I had over 100 first dates.
Oh my Lord, that's a lot. That's a lot. But
Yeah.
I gotta give it to you for committing, because I think after 10, I would have been like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So
Well, but
that's good. That perseverance. I admire that.
well, there was an interesting component about that because, for one, I realized that the something wasn't right was me. Like I was the common denominator. But more
Right.
importantly, I was addicted to the connections I was making. I was making, actually, in many cases, I was communicating with women, not necessarily from a dating perspective, but making friends because we could bond in this common space of being divorced and that sort of thing. And then what would happen is women would reach out to me and say, hey, Jonathan, would you look at my dating profile and help me make it better? And so
Oh, okay.
I
Right.
give
Yeah.
advice on how to make it better. But then here's where it even got juicier. Then after they made their profile better, I'd get a phone call. Hey, Jonathan, would you look at this guy's profile and tell me what you think about
Ah.
him? And that's where this was birthed. And literally within a couple years of that, doing that, I was already unhappy in my professional life and I was going through a change anyway. I threw up a cheesy website one day. This was,
Mhm.
15 years ago or give or
Yeah.
take. And all of a sudden my coaching practice was birthed. And as you shared, I have over
Yeah.
200 followers on YouTube and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense because, now, I mean, what is it? I don't even know what the divorce rate is now, but it's at least 50%, right? I mean, at least 50.
Well,
So, and if we live
yeah,
long enough and if our average lifespan is between 75 and, 85, many of us are divorced, and that doesn't mean that we don't want to date, or we don't want to find another partner. So, I find just being in that age group, midlife age group, and a lot of my friends are single, that they find dating super, super challenging, especially online dating. And so many people come to the table with so much baggage that they haven't addressed yet. And I love the fact that you're coming at it from I was the common denominator here. Let me look at myself, and working on yourself to attract that person that you want. So let's talk about that. How did that happen?
well, I mean, again, coming back to at least in that period of time, I noticed that the pattern of, I'd meet someone really nice, but something wasn't right. And what I realized was I wasn't really ready for a relationship, but I wanted companionship. I wanted connection. I wanted sex, but I really wasn't ready for commitment. So what happened is, as I was talking to women and them sharing their story, I realized they're dating me. They're dating a guy like me that isn't ready for commitment because of, as you said, we call it baggage, but let's be a little bit kinder and we'll call it luggage. In midlife, and what I realized that I could speak to a demographic because most people, roughly 75% of singles over 45 years old, and this is anecdotal, are divorced. And divorce comes with it, in many cases, alimony, child support, visitation rights, family court, erectile dysfunction, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, the 20 and 30-year-old dating coaches don't understand this, but for us that are in their 40s, 50s, or even 60s, it's a whole different ballgame when you get to this age. We are dealing with more, you called it baggage, I'll call it luggage or stuff. And that's the hard part, is how does your stuff fit with my stuff?
Right. And many times it doesn't. And that's why people will have this sour taste in their mouth about, I'll never go online again. And then, of course, I hear other stories from other people that maybe have done the work and they decide to create their profile and meet somebody very quickly and become in a serious relationship, because I don't believe that story when people say, oh, there's no good men out there, or all women are crazy, or they just want money. I don't subscribe to those stories. I mean, there's 8 billion people on the planet. You're telling me you can't find somebody in your demographic who would be perfect for you? No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I won't accept that.
Well, I want to address what you just said.
Good.
I can't find someone in the demographic. But the challenge is this: because we no longer live in tribes, villages, towns, that sort of thing, is that a single eligible person isn't standing right in front of us on a regular basis every day. And online dating now has radically surpassed what 20 years ago was. You met people at work, you met them in college, you met them at church, you met them. I mean, even nightclubs used to be more popular. Now, 60+% of couples meet through an online connection. And the problem is now we're overloaded with so many potentials that it's hard to find the forest through the trees, so to speak. That's the hard part.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Are most of your clients women? I'm just curious, or men?
I focus on women. I would say a small percentage is men, because you know what what's fascinating about women? Men, they just want to know how to meet women. That's what they go and seek advice. Women will spend more time trying to figure out men instead of themselves. They're like, well, what are men thinking? Like, women seem to be more, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but more interested in understanding men, and men just want to know how to meet women.
Interesting. Do you find that, because I have a lot of, or I know a lot of women, I should say, and a few good friends of women that are choosing, who are at midlife, who maybe were married or had children who are grown, are choosing to stay single. But I don't know any men that are doing that. I don't know any men that are choosing to stay single. What do you think about that? About that dynamic that's happening?
I think to some degree, to answer my perception on that is men typically want physical connection. So the drive to be out in the dating marketplace, it might be those men that may not want relationship, but they want physical connection. So they may be actively looking for connection. But the population of singles in the United States, I think it might be upwards near 100 million people. Like, it's a significant, I'm not exactly sure the numbers, but the amount of non-married people probably outnumbers married people today.
Wow. Well, I do know a lot of this younger generation are not necessarily jumping into marriage. That doesn't mean they're not in
Yeah.
relationships, but they're not necessarily jumping into marriage.
Yeah.
Many women,
Yeah.
younger women, don't want to have children anymore. So things are changing, because for women, and as a woman, it's very different for us than it was, say, 50 years ago, right? I mean, women don't need a man in the sense for their economic stability anymore. So so it's very different for women. But for men, are men starting to come to you and saying, my relationship fell apart. I was closed off. I didn't talk to my wife or my girlfriend. She always complained. And I know I have this about me. Can you help me? Like, are men looking to look inside themselves more and say, what is it about me? Like, this is what I want, but this is what I have to give. Are you finding that?
I would say the percentage of men who are doing personal development, self-help, spiritual work, or therapy regarding relationships is increasing substantially versus the
Good.
past. I would say men in the past were probably more stoic and didn't
Mhm.
address their fears and insecurities and patterns, but that number is increasing. I even did a workshop where it was called the Hoffman process, and it was 40 people in an 8-day workshop, and there was actually 20 men and 19 women in the class. So
Oh, wow.
just to give you some context, it is now men oftentimes gravitate more towards the Tony Robbins, the wealth
Sure.
building components,
Yeah,
like they
I
tend to
know.
seek help in that area because our money represents a big part of a person's
Of
identity,
course.
particularly for men. So, but it's starting to shift more into relationships. I mean, some men even know what the 5 love languages are.
That's good. I'm happy to hear that, because I think that the more of us, both men, women, it doesn't matter, whatever gender you identify, the more of us do the work on ourselves, the better it is for everybody, right? Because people who are secure with who they are happy, who have done the work, they show up in the world in a much kinder, more approachable way, right? Like that saying, hurt people. They're saying that for a reason,
Sure.
because they express that outwardly. So so the only way to change anything is to work on yourself, and that will shift everything around you. So I want to talk about you talk about why you believe relationships are the best path to self-love. Can you share what you mean by that?
Sure, that's a great question. So, relationships or dating and relationships, because dating does this
Right, of
very
course.
intensely, triggers what I believe is the number one emotional health wound most everybody faced is I'm not good enough, I'm not
Yeah,
lovable, I'm not
yeah,
likable. It's like
right.
relationships just trigger our stuff. So they're great containers for growth. And while we can do individual growth on our own when we're not in relationship, the minute you pair up with someone and your differences start to emerge, oh boy,
Mhm.
will this open
Sure.
up the can of worms? And so it really, it's interesting. I was listening to Esther Perel recently talk about in the past, relationships were like a tight knot. It was like,
Mhm.
in other words, this is 50, 100 plus years ago. There was like, once you got married, there was no out. You had to figure it out.
Right.
Whereas today she claims that relationships are like loose threads. The minute,
Mhm.
there's a bump in the road, you're like, oh, okay, I'll just release this one and on to the next
Yeah.
one. But the real growth comes when you overcome your differences as a team. And if
Right.
you do this enough times, you can build a long lasting relationship because the reality is as humans are, there's no two people that are alike. You've got to bump
Right.
up against your differences. And so in
Yeah.
relationships, we bump into them more often.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And I think it's also learned too by what you see with your parents and your grandparents. I come from my family a long line of long relationships. My great grandparents were married almost 80 years. They were old when they died. My parents have been married 55 years. Everybody's been married a very, very long time. So when I was married, I went in with that expectation. My ex-husband's family was completely broken, cheating, broken, remarrying other people. You just leave when it gets too hard. So the relationship couldn't be, from his perspective, could never be worked out because he doesn't know what that looks like, although I did. So it's interesting how when we come into a commitment, what we think of commitment has to do with it too, just going off that point that you just said, don't you think?
It's interesting. As I'm hearing that, it reminds me of the blueprint I grew up with. I was told to go to college, get a job, meet someone, get married, buy a house, start a family. Like that was the
Right.
blueprint I grew up with.
Yeah.
And my parents, to some extent, were my role models. And as a child, I probably picked up more on all the negativity between them versus the positivity. And my parents were married 66 years before my mother passed away. But
Okay.
I think we all have a blueprint that
Yeah.
starts from childhood. And then what ends up happening is we follow that blueprint. And all of a sudden, many people find, well, this isn't what I really wanted. And what we said earlier, the loose threads, we end relationships without working them through. Because I think many people, Melissa, just don't know who they are at a very young age. We don't
True.
really start to know ourselves, and I believe, until we've gotten, to midlife.
Yeah, I think
And
so too. I
I think
agree.
that's one of the reasons why it's it. But you know what's fascinating? If first marriages end at a 50% rate, then the question is, why do second and third marriages end at a 65 and 75% rate? Like, it's fascinating
Why do you
because
think they do?
I think it's because very few people actually examine what ended the relationship and worked on their stuff, particularly worked on good communication skills.
Right.
Everybody says the most important thing about relationship is communication, but if you don't have good communication skills, it's just you're going to be bumping up against the same thing again and again, and that's why divorces happen at a higher rate for those going their second and third go around.
Yeah. So what was it that you thought about you when you were dating and you were meeting all these women, but nothing was sticking, and you started to realize that you needed to look at yourself, that took you on the path to looking about self-love and deciding to write the book?
So for me, by the time I started to realize I was the common denominator, the movie The Secret came out. I started to listen to personal development. I started to, listen to spirituality. I then sought a therapist. So I was starting a growth path for myself. And I recognized that I recognized I wasn't ready for a relationship. But darn, I wanted companionship. I wanted connection. I wanted sex. It's hard to do that outside of the container of the relationship. But I reached a point, and by the way, I did end up in a relationship with a woman who was a therapist. And I'll be candid with you. It was like great because she reparented me because I had free therapy along the way. Blessing and a
Right.
curse, let me just say.
I'm sure.
And so it wasn't, but I recognize that, the real problem lies, all the answers lie within, and I would say the problem lies within. And, when I began writing my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? I mean, it was birthed when my son passed away. It was like I
Yeah.
needed to channel, I had all this energy of angst, and I wanted to channel it. And I'd already been blogging about self-love, just writing a few blogs about it. And people go, well, self-love, it's kind of cliche, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You have to love yourself before. So here's my way of viewing it. Self-love isn't about self-care. In other words, it isn't manicures and pedicures, although those are good things, massages, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Self-love is around self-worth, self-confidence, self-reliance, self-discipline. It's all these self-words wrapped into love, but it's more about we all have a little 6-year-old inside of us that's hurting to some degree. Many of us have been wounded from our childhood, and very few people have done any real healing from their childhood. So we all have a 6-year-old inside of us, an emotional 6-year-old, excuse me,
Yeah.
that needs nurturing. And so self-love is the adult in you taking care of the little 6-year-old inside of you on an emotional level. That's the way I interpret self-love. And again, when people say you have to love yourself until you love another, well, self-love is not a destination. It's a journey.
Right.
But if you're stuck in negative or limiting beliefs, negative patterns, judgments, insecurities, doubts, if you're in a stuck place, then it does I believe if you want to be in a healthy relationship, work on those areas in your life and then step into a relationship. Because again, relationships we've already discussed is like, healing on steroids.
Yeah.
And preferably find someone who's willing to work on it. But here's the problem. We are indoctrinated in a fantasy way of dating. We are indoctrinated in believing chemistry equals relationship success, and we need to be romanced and entertained, and that is the furthest thing from the truth.
Oh yeah. Oh, I so agree with that. That's why when I watch those movies, those rom-com movies, and now that I'm older, I swear, and it's terrible, the cynic in me, I just roll my eyes and I'm like, well, if that was real life, that would never work. That would fall apart. Like let's see them in 2 years, right? That's what I want to see. Make that movie. Because you could just see, you see all the red flags. All right, let's pause here and take our break, and then we'll continue our conversation in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned, everybody, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives. Hi, and welcome back. If you're just joining me, I have Jonathon Aslay on as my guest, and he has a YouTube channel where he has many, many followers as he talks about a midlife dating. And he is the author of the book, What the Heck is Self Love Anyway? And you can find out more about him if you go to jonathanAslay.com. Okay, Jonathan, so we were talking before the break about, you were talking about the difference between what we understand as self love and what basically advertisers, movies, these things show us what we think about romantic love, right? So the two dichotomies, like there's a difference between knowing ourselves and being secure and then looking for somebody else to fulfill this void, right? Of
Yeah.
Because if you don't love yourself, you want somebody else to show you how much they love you because that makes you feel good because you need it so desperately because you're lacking in self-love. And how do we start to discover that, uh, first of all, what to do to bring that self-love into our life and not look to try to grab it from somebody else?
Well, you have to, I think it starts by knowing yourself. I think we have to examine and look inward and say, I have to know who I am. And I think it starts with an awareness of what your insecurities, your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs, your judgments, all these things is start to look inward. And I like to start with my insecurities.
Okay.
Because those are the things that, we hyper focus on all the beautiful aspects of love and not the real parts of love, which is our fears. And so it starts with that. Also, for those sophisticated enough to want to learn something called love attachment style, this is research that's been out for a lot of years, understanding the difference between in romantic relationships between secure love and insecure love. And what most humans aren't aware is they attach to another human being oftentimes in an insecure way. So when a person starts to do inner work and they examine what their attachment style is, it can give them insight into how they will interact with another human being. But here's the thing about this, Melissa. Most humans do the test online, and they all come out secure. And it's like, because we humans gaslight ourselves. We have this sophisticated way of creating a delusion about who we are. So they're not really getting to the nitty gritty of what's going on because they have a perception of who they are versus who they really are. And then once you're in relationship, who you really are starts to surface after we get past that brief little, chemical high that we have when we meet someone.
Honeymoon period, right? The honeymoon period. Well, my dad is the best because he always says Monday morning always comes. And Monday morning is the start of the week. You got to, the responsibilities, paying the bills, like the weekend's over. And that happens in relationships. Monday morning always comes. So that's when you start to look at each other and think, I don't know, can I live with you? I don't like that about you, or I don't like how I am showing up when you're around, like certain things that it's bringing up. And maybe I always believe that people should spend some time by themselves as adults. That's just my personal opinion. Be alone for a little bit to really know who you are and what you like and what you don't like. And when you find things you don't like, look for people who can help you and like a coach like you, like a dating coach or a therapist or whatever you need, and start to work on yourself.
It's funny you say that because thinking about being alone. My father recently passed away at 99 years old. And I was like, just amazed that he lived that long. So we celebrate that morning.
Yeah.
But I look back at my father's life, and he was, had a mother and father who raised him. He immediately went into the military and was in military. And then he met my mother and was with her for 66 years. And my dad didn't become alone for the first time in his life until he was 92 years old.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and then we sent him to an assisted living facility. So he never was
Right.
ever alone.
Really
Okay.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And now he's a byproduct of that, baby or pre-baby
Of
boom
course.
generation, and
Right.
all
Of
that.
course. Yeah.
But now we see a significant percentage of Americans in particular who live by themselves. And I think this is the next evolution of what we're experiencing in humanity is the need to learn to love your own company.
Yes.
And that's why we see so many singles, particularly in the midlife demographic. And the real call is not to find someone to complete you, which I know the movie Jerry Maguire glorified,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
learning to complete yourself. And believe me, this is hard to do because life is better with company, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, it's learning to love your own company. And whether you find a mate or not, it's really I believe it's learning to love your own company.
Oh, I do too. And how do you find your own Are you in a relationship now, or are you not in a relationship, or
So,
what's your status?
so,
If you don't
so I
mind
found,
sharing. You can
oh,
tell me
no,
it's none of my business if you want. That's
no,
fine.
I'm happily shared. So,
Okay.
a few years ago, I was in a significant relationship where we lived together, and it ended a year and a half ago, and she realized that something was missing in her life, and she wanted to move back she wanted to move to a different state to be near family, and so the
Okay.
relationship ended. And I'll be candid with you, I was heartbroken. I mean, I genuinely wanted to marry this person. I was deeply in love. And for the year and a half that we were together and we even lived together, we had a great relationship. It was something was missing for her, and she needed to go find that for herself. And if you genuinely care for someone, then if you love someone, you let them go, kind of thing. But I will tell you that the pain that I experienced was another learning lesson for me, that I had to learn to be for me to be a better coach. I really
Yeah.
had to learn what this pain was. And I'm not saying, I sometimes believe that, my karma is I've got to experience all the pain so I can be a better coach. I feel like
Yeah.
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I
And,
can see. I can understand that. Yeah. Okay. Well,
and,
we
and
teach what we most know, right? What we need to learn ourselves. That's what a lot of us do. We
exactly.
talk about those things we need to learn ourselves, right? So yeah, of
And,
course, it makes
and
sense.
I'm in an evolution where now I'm recognized. You see, I'm a big proponent of partnership-based relationships. In
Okay.
other words,
Mhm.
I'm a little old school in that way,
Mhm.
whether it's living together, getting married. But I'm now recognizing that relationships really do come in all shapes and sizes. And
Mhm.
I think we get a little caught up with the destination instead of just experiencing the ride. And
Yeah.
and I think as humans, and particularly women, tend to get more hung up on this. And that's not to sound misogynistic or anything like that. I just observed it, and maybe just because I coach women. Um, the minute we connect with someone, we're always focused on where is it going. And I'm not suggesting just living in the moment. I'm really encouraging my clients to operate from a place of absolute integrity with themselves, open and honest, authentic, transparent, vulnerable communication. And at the same time going, okay, this person that I may meet and start to date, let's not focus on the destination, because every relationship has a lesson. And that's what I encourage.
Well, I'm not surprised that most women, and I believe you when you say that women, because I just know from from lots of girlfriends through the years, they meet a guy, they fall in love, and it's where's it going? Are we going to get married? Are we going to live together? Where are we going to, the house? And so they're already like 3 years into the relationship, and I think it's because there is story that we take on as women from a very young age, that we have to have a relationship. If we're not married and we don't have children, women get questions that they would never question men. Like, why aren't you with somebody? What made you decide not to have children? And I've decided not to have children, and I get that a lot. And I look at people, well, not as much anymore, but when I was a little bit younger, and I think, well, first of all, I don't know you, and that's none of your business. You know what I mean? And then I'm thinking, like, what makes people think that they can make a judgment about that? So we get told very young, you have to be married, you have to be somebody's wife, and you have to have children, right? And so a lot of us carry that story with us, and we feel like, well, if that isn't our story, something is wrong with us, and that goes back to the self-worth. And that goes back to the self-love, right? So that is a lot of why I think women, as soon as they meet somebody that they're really attracted to and they really like, and he likes them, they're already like 5 years ahead. Right.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I do believe women tend to be more conditioned that way. There's no doubt about it. But I also believe that if you're in a relationship for 3 years and you're not having some meaningful conversations
Yes.
about what's the purpose of this relationship, if nothing else,
Right.
you don't have to focus on where is it going, but what's the purpose? And by the way, a lot of people in midlife are now accepting more part-time casual relationships because
Yes.
for some people it's better to have something than nothing. And that's okay too. I think we have to let go of the judgment around the relationship. But here's the key point. And sadly, women, I'm not always, but more often than not, they have duct tape over their mouth. In other words, they're not speaking their truth to the guy because they're afraid
Right.
to upset the apple cart. And I'm like, the
Right.
truth is how you build deeper connection. So, hey, if your truth is you want something more and you're afraid by talking about it, it's going to make the guy run away, then you're not in a real partner. You're not in a real relationship if you can't be your authentic self.
Right. And then sooner, so you're not wasting more of your time with somebody who doesn't want the same things that you want. And everybody's different. And I know another woman who is a dating coach, and she told me, and I thought this was interesting, that more and more clients that are coming to her, and maybe you found this too, are redefining what it looks like to be in a committed relationship. For example, many people who are deciding to move in together or buy homes, or buying homes that have two master bedrooms or designing them that way. There are people who are keeping their own homes and still would consider themselves in a fully committed relationship. That is their partner, but have decided to keep their own homes. And she said that she's seeing that more and more. And I thought, I really like that actually, because I'm the kind of person that needs a lot of my own space and my own time. You know what I mean? Like, I need a lot of that, and I like my own company. So I don't like when somebody's up my ass, so to speak. Like, what are we doing? Like, what do we mean we? Like, there needs to be some of just me. You can go have you. So I like that people are doing that. Have you found that
Well,
with some of your clients?
Well, that's the new prevailing narrative. It's called living together apart or living apart together. I have noticed a significant percentage of people that exactly what you described. I'm starting to adopt that even for myself, is that
Mhm.
I like my me time. I like my own company. I don't want to, necessarily, and I don't necessarily want to have to talk on the phone every single night to keep the thing,
Yeah.
to keep the other going. And so a
Right.
lot of people are opting. I mean, it's almost like casual but committed. Like
Right.
it's like,
Mhm.
look, there's a casualness to this. There's a part time to this, but we're still committed to it. I think ultimately, though, once you get to a certain age, um,
Mhm.
like if you're doing this for 20, you started in your 50s with this person and now you're in your
Right.
70s. I'm like, all right, just
80s.
get married and move in together because, it's cheaper. Two people can live cheaper than one.
Right,
Um,
right, of course. Right. Yeah.
so, and some people are starting this way even in their 60s, but ultimately, I think there reaches a point in time, you start to get into your 70s, the days in front of you are shorter than the days behind
Right.
you. Do you want to finish this ride called life in a separate home, or do you want to have someone else in it? I think there becomes a tipping point where you might want to look at it from that vantage point.
Sure, and you can still have your own bedroom. They're just down the hall.
Oh, I talked to
So,
a dear friend of mine. I talked to a
yeah.
dear friend of mine, and she said, I mean, she's in her mid-50s, and she's like, she tells men right up front, look I just want you to know something. If we go the distance, I have my own separate bedroom because I don't want to sleep in the same bed with someone. And I was like, wow, that's kind of ballsy on your part. I'm like,
No,
but I understand it too.
I'm the same way. There's no. My own bedroom is my my bedroom is my sanctuary. No more
Yeah.
sharing a bed. No more bedroom share. So yeah, I think a lot of women are feeling like that. And then also, for women and men too. But as we get older, our bodies are changing, going through menopause. Let me tell you something. Hot flashes in the middle of the night are no joke. So I don't know how many men want to sleep in a bedroom where it's like 50 degrees in there because the woman's dying, of heat. So I think that if it works for the two people involved in the relationship and they're both feeling fulfilled, they can design it any way that they want, no matter what society is saying or telling them. Truthfully, that's what it is. It's the open communication and being able to speak what you want to your partner. But I want to ask you this because you talk about this, and I want to know what you did about applying your self-love practice after your relationship ends. What do you tell people to do, and what did you do when your relationship ended?
I'll be really candid with you. I went immediately to acceptance, and because I understood, like, in other words, this wasn't a bunch of fights that led to a breakup.
Right.
This was one person. If it's not right for one, it's really not right for the both. So I went to radical acceptance pretty quickly, but I'll be candid with you. 8 months later, I blew up because
hit you.
the loss I blew up, and the loss of a relationship is no different than a death. It's just a different death, the death of the dream, the death of hope, all that sort of thing. And when I went through the loss of my son, I went through different stages of grief, and one of them is anger. And I bypassed the anger because I went to radical acceptance. I recognize now, a breakup, I don't care if it's a short-lived experience, a longer experience, whatever, it's a death. And we have to treat breakups similarly to the grieving process of losing a loved one. And so I went straight to, like, once I hit then I went into anger. Now, I didn't get angry at her. I was just angry at the circumstances. Well, let me backtrack. I was angry at her, but not because of a judgment around her. It was more, I was the collateral damage to her making a change for her life. And so I took a baseball bat to a pillow for days, and I just let a lot of it out. If anyone listening, if you're familiar with somatic therapy or emotional release work, our body stores up a lot of energy when we're in pain. And so emotional release work is one of the things I did. And like any loss, it never really goes away 100%. Like my son, the loss of my son doesn't go away. I've just incorporated it into my life. And it's the same with a relationship ending, but I don't long for her. I don't want, like, I think the mistake people make, or not mistake, but the pain is, we want that person back to fill what's missing inside of us. And so the self-love practice is really nurturing your soul. I'm going to say this. There's really, I can't give you these 10, do exercise, I can say a bunch of things, but you have to find what's right within yourself. And that's really the ultimate journey of life, is how can we be at peace within ourselves?
Yes.
And whether we're in a relationship or not.
Yeah. No, that's a good point about getting all that energy out because it does store in your body. And I talk about this a little bit in my book that we manifest issues and dis-ease in our body where stuck and stored emotions are that we just kind of push down and we don't want to deal with. So that is one way of working through it. But what would be a good, I mean, like, you can't obviously say for everybody, but what have you found consistently, or you tell your clients to do consistently when they're trying to do something to incorporate a self love practice when they're feeling, not good enough, not worthy, or maybe they are grieving the loss of a relationship? What is a good thing that we can incorporate into our daily life that really sort of you find helps a lot of people?
I could tell you meditation, I could tell you yoga, I could tell you
Yeah.
exercise, tell you call your friends. But you want to know what I've observed that you can't necessarily do on a daily basis, but you could, move that needle along. You know,
Uh,
group. I'm going to call it group therapy, but hear me out for a second, okay? Because it's not
okay.
therapy per se. But what I've observed is when I have a circle of friends that we get together on a regular basis, and it's like group therapy meets a pajama party kind of thing, where we sit in a circle with a group and we share what's going on in our lives, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I do this on a regular basis. I do this a couple times a month on average. And what it is when you hear others share their experiences and you're sharing your experiences, and it actually helps us get better in touch with our own feelings. But more importantly, what the group does, at least within my circle, which is both men and women, I have a men's group and a group that's both men and women, we work on trying to get to what we need. Like, what do you need? Like, we identify what we're feeling, the pain, the insecurity, like the feeling, like anxiety, depression, agitation, frustration. And it could be in any area of your life. It doesn't have to be breakups. It could be just the frustration of dating, as an example.
Right, of course.
And by getting into what need is required, and when we start practicing identifying our feelings and then identifying our needs, this is how we learn to be better communicators in relationship. And this is where most couples fail. Most relationships fail as a breakdown of communication because they're feeling their feelings, but they don't know how to identify it and articulate it, and then articulate it in a healthy way and addressing what need is being come. Like when a child screams, parent doesn't know what's going on, and they look and they go, well, they peed in their diaper or they stubbed a toe. A child doesn't tell what need is, the parent figures it out. But we all have a need that needs to be addressed when we get an ouch. So if I can encourage people to do, and by the way, you can create your own group and you can join groups. There are tons of groups probably within, 10 miles of where everybody lives. I mean, give or take, if they're in a rural area. Or start your own group. I know so many women who have started little groups, and that is because it's also bonding from a community perspective too. In many cases, as I said earlier in this broadcast, how we went from living in tribes and villages and towns to, I'm encouraging everyone to create their community so they can share what's in their heart. When we start sharing from our heart, we start feeling more relief.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yes, I have been in groups and that has helped me tremendously. But also, you in your book, What the Heck is Self Love Anyway? You have a lot of practices in there for people who want to start looking at how to incorporate a self love routine so that they can start to feel good about themselves in your book, right?
Well, I didn't want to do a brag, but yes, my book is a very simplistic version of. It's, by the way, everyone is listening. It's very simplistic. It's just a bunch of little exercises and principles to start looking inward and taking ownership of your life, because at the end of the day, we only have ourselves at the end of the day, as much as we'd love to be, partnered and all that good stuff. But, learning to love your own company, as we said earlier. So, yeah, my book does have some little short, tools, if you will. At the end of the book, it's also all the resources, all the things I've gone through, whether it was the movie The Secret or Tony Robbins or therapy, all the different modalities that I've worked on over the last 20 years. And my hope is just to encourage people to work on themselves because, this roller coaster thing called life,
Right, of course.
you spend 100% of it with yourself more than anybody else.
Absolutely. So, Jonathan, tell people where they can find you in your YouTube channel.
Sure. So as Melissa shared, and thank you for allowing me to share, Melissa. My YouTube channel is Jonathon Aslay, last name spelled Aslay, and you can go to Google and find me on YouTube and my website and all that good stuff.
Oh, it was such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for being here. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's show, and thank you for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave, and I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.